I'll be speaking on the echoes of God. The echoes of God. Jesus is the echo of God. His voice is the exact voice of God. So when Jesus speaks, when God speaks, the echo you hear is Jesus. Jesus did not rule from earth to heaven. He ruled from heaven to earth. That was why whatever he binds on earth is automatically bound in heaven. What Jesus binds on earth are the things that has already been bound in heaven. That's the mystery. So don't God will God will have mercy. When you hear things like whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, you may think you can just be binding anything, and no. Whatever you bind on earth must be bound in heaven. That statement, for you to walk in that reality, you must rule from heaven to earth. You can't do it from earth to heaven. You have to fulfill that statement from heaven to earth. What do I mean? Because those things you will be binding on earth are those things you have seen that are bound in heaven. So if you bind anything on earth that has not been bound in heaven, it will not be bound. So it's whatever you bind on earth is bound in heaven. So you have to, what that means is you have to check the will of God before you speak against something. Check the will of God. Does this thing follows the will of God? If it flows with the will of God, that means that thing is not bound in heaven. So you don't have a right to bind it on earth. But you have to check the will of God again. Okay, this thing is against the will of God. So you can bind it on earth and to be bound because you have checked heaven. So before you make your command, check heaven first. That's why I said for you to walk in that reality, you have to start from heaven. You have to move from heaven to earth. You can't do it from earth to heaven. No, it has to be from heaven to earth. I just hope you understand what I'm saying. So that's it. Whatever you bound on earth shall be bound in heaven. Not just anything. Check the will of God first. If it looks like God's will, you can't bind it on earth because it will not be bound. But if it doesn't look like the will of God, you can bound it on earth because it is already bound in heaven. Now, this is the key. Anything that is not God's will is bound in heaven. That's why heaven is not for sinners, because the will of God is done perfectly in heaven. So whatever does not look like the will of God, if you go to heaven and you check it, that thing has been bound. For instance, sickness is not the will of God. So people don't get sick in heaven. Why? Sickness has been bound. Diseases are not the will of God. So in heaven, there are no diseases. Why? Diseases has been bound. So go and check the will of God first. Look at that thing before you now make attempt to bind it on earth. The Lord will help.